Okay, so now we're live on YouTube and also on our Zoom call. So I just want to welcome everyone again for those who attended the first presentation this morning. This is the regional week presented by Veka and also sponsored by Everlast group of companies. So thanks to our sponsors again. So right now we have Al Yagelis with us. So for those who are used to our weekly tech talks, this is not going to be too different, but we'll try to focus this one on your BC region, which is a region that Al knows pretty well. So, Al, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to meet you all on the web.
So, what's going to be your topic today?
So I'm going to cover two topics. First, we're going to look at just an update on the public review to the changes in the National Building Code. And we're good, but that'll be the shorter part. And then we're going to talk about an update on the market transformation program for fenestration products. Mm-hmm. And we're going to take a look at that. And that'll be the major part of what we're going to look at in this morning's session.
Perfect. So we can start and go right into the topic.
Sounds good.
Do you have anything to share? Like you want to share your screen or okay? Yeah, I see it's coming up. Here we go.
Okay, all good at your end, Steph?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Great. So we're going to start this morning with an update on where we're at with the Spring 2020 public review. As you may recall, the public review period was from January to March of this year. And all the code changes in this public review focused on stricter energy performance requirements on large and small buildings, and the introduction of defined tiers or steps of better than base code energy performance, similar to the BC Energy Step Code. The tiered approach in the national code was going to do really what the BC Building Code also did, is to allow municipalities to adopt higher tiers independently of the base code. So in the tiered approach, at some point, the code is going to step from one level to another in terms of stricter energy performance requirements, but it allows municipalities to jump ahead to higher steps when they rezone a parcel of land or in a particular subdivision. And so that kind of approach we've already seen in the BC Energy Step Code is coming to the national code as proposed in these changes. Now, Fenestration Canada and other associations commented on these changes to the National Energy Code, which applies to large buildings, and changes in Part 9 that apply to small buildings where the measures were introduced. So there were quite a lot of comments submitted by industry broadly, not just the window industry. We were concerned about specific elements of this, but the builders in particular were very concerned about some of the changes to the, especially in Part 9, such as mandatory air tightness testing and the specific qualification paths in the tiered code. They started reviewing public comments in late May, and they were supposed to be done by the end of June, but guess what? They're still meeting as of now, and they're going to continue for until they're done, basically. So as a result, the publication of the 2020 National Code has been postponed till December 2021. And in the next couple slides, I'll review some of the updates that Jeff Baker has given us. He's been monitoring the work of these committees, and it's just been dragging on for months. I tried to follow the process for a while, but honestly, it would have taken up a huge amount of my time to have sat through all the meetings and the endless discussions. So the next few slides are going to rely on a report that Jeff Baker provided to the associations that have funded his work monitoring this. So on the large building side, National Energy Code for Building, there was a PCF proposed change 1414 to radically reduce the air leakage through doors, well below the levels in NAFs. And this was quite alarming to the industry. And so the task group that reviewed the feedback from industry has accepted the industry's concerns that these attempts to go well beyond what the NAF standard requires in terms of air leakage, and also beyond what the National Energy Code for building had for air leakage in large buildings. The entrance doors to buildings are allowed to have a much higher rate of air leakage in standards like ASHRAE 90.1 and also in the National Energy Code for buildings. And they wanted to ratchet those levels down to levels, to the NAFS levels and below, which is just not practical. So they've walked that one back, and at least the task group that was discussing this with industry has agreed that these were unreasonable changes. As of Jeff's report, August 28th, they had not yet done that. It's possible that that has happened already. Another proposed change had to do with fenestration U values. This would apply to the commercial fenestration systems, window walls, curtain walls, storefront. The industry had largely opposed the reductions in U value, but there was a compromise. The industry agreed to lower fenestration and skylight U factors, but to leave the door U factors unchanged. And this compromise was in return for something that was even more important to the commercial side of the industry, which was the next code change we're going to talk about. So it looks like the Standing Committee on Energy Efficiency has accepted this one. This is the one that really had some in the commercial industry, and especially in Quebec, the AVFQ were concerned. That's proposed change 1541 to reduce the minimum window to wall ratio, which in the National Energy Code is called fenestration and door to wall ratio. So the committee agreed to withdraw reduction to that window to wall ratio in return to the industry's compromise on U value. When it comes to the Part 9 requirements, there were two code changes here that introduced tiered prescriptive compliance path and a tiered performance compliance path. This is something that all the associations had some comments on. We didn't all have the same comments, but definitely the majority of comments were from other stakeholders, including builders, and the Canadian Home Builders Association. There was a lot of pushback to many requirements that affected other parts of the building, not just the windows and doors. And both the Part 9 committee has been meeting, as well as a task group made up of Energy Efficiency Committee and Part 9 committee members have been hashing through these issues and are continuing to address the concerns. And I guess they're going to continue until they're done. But basically, it's still too early to know what the shape of the Part 9 energy requirement is going to be like. Any questions from anyone on the status of the 2020 National Code Change public review?
For now, I don't see questions, but we can give it a couple seconds.
Sure. This doesn't affect people in BC very much because we've already been into the step code process for several years. And so we're quite familiar with the step code concept. Yeah. Honestly, the national code doesn't appear to be quite as rigorous as the step code in its approach. And but I think BC consulted more widely before they introduced the step code, and the industry knew it was coming. So, basically they introduced the step code in 2015, and they said it would only finish at the highest level by 2032. They gave themselves 15 years to get there. The national code is giving themselves 10 years, and they haven't had the extensive public review, consultations in the development of the code. And I think that's why they were flooded with so many comments, protesting it and are working through them.
Okay. We do have questions now. So Terry's asking, care to guess as to when the values and everything else will be finalized?
Well, I would hope they get to it by Christmas. You know, we're now nearing the end of September. Because I'm following these issues, I'm continuing to get invitations to these 2 and 3 hour long code
Mhm.
meetings that are happening virtually every week.
Yeah.
So, and the ones that I've sat in on, they're still really walking through, you know, line by line and issue by issue and table by table, things to do with airtightness and things like that. I would guess that it should be done by around Christmas, but I'm guessing at that point.
Well, it's a guess, right? So,
Yeah,
someone's asking, what do the tiers in the performance and prescriptive path looks like?
they look like baby steps actually. And for example, on the prescriptive path, I think they've only outlined the first tier. Sorry, and they have two prescriptive. Sorry, so the step or the tiers, they created two different categories. One is a point system, prescriptive points. So if you upgrade to high performance windows, you'll get maybe 7 out of 10 points in let's say, the colder parts of the country, which is pretty good. It kind of really demonstrates to the builder there's a lot of improvement value in the window. At the same time, there's a performance path that is more like BC. It requires a hot 2000 model, and you have to model your proposed house against a code compliant house of the same general area and size, and you have to perform to some percent better than the base code. So, so there's both a prescriptive and a performance path with respect to enclosure insulation levels. One of the difficulties has been is that they were wanting to introduce mandatory airtightness testing. I'm not sure if that's going to go through. There's concerns about capacity and so on. And there are a lot of unresolved issues as to how do you measure airtightness. Let's say you're building a row house or a townhouse. It could be a Part 9 building, but how do you measure air leakage when air can leak between the suites? And there's just no end of issues that they're talking about.
Okay.
So the question is, what is the new value likely to be? Patrick's asking the question.
Yeah.
It's not a single U value. Basically, in the tiered prescriptive step code, the builder has to acquire for tier 1, they have to acquire 10 points. And for, you know, you might upgrade to a different kind of water heater, you'll get 2 points or 2.5 points. If you add insulation here, it'll be 3 or 4 points. If you add it there, it'll be 1.5 points. So there are a bunch of measures laid out that the builder can choose from to accumulate their 10 points. So, but it was interesting to me that the highest points, some of the highest points you could get were from choosing higher performance windows. At the Energy Star level, you're getting, I think, about 7 points in climate zones 5 and 6, for example. So that really, you know, makes the higher performing window an attractive option to the builder because it may be more cost effective than the other measures they'd have to do to accumulate the equivalent number of points.
So the question about we have a little precision here. So the person says, I was looking for information on the specific window U factors for prescriptive and for the EUI targets for performance path.
Right. Okay. I just don't have that information handy.
Okay. Okay.
You know, there is a, you know, in the proposed change, there was a table with the specific prescriptive points. And similarly, there was a table of the energy use intensity targets, but I don't have that information handy today.
Okay. We have John Hill asking, can you contrast the energy performance requirements of the NBC and the requirements of the National Energy Code of Canada? Are they the same?
Okay, so when it comes to small buildings, the energy performance requirements are in Part 9. When it comes to large buildings, the energy performance requirements are in the National Energy Code for Buildings, not in the NBC. So if you look at the National Building Code, they don't have large building energy performance requirements in that National Building Code. Okay. Those are in that National Energy Code for Buildings.
Okay, so they're not the same.
Not the same, yeah.
Okay. Cam is saying, doesn't this create an unfair advantage for the door industry over the patio door industry? Is it being discussed that consumers may just use a hinge door over a patio door to meet the lower U values?
I have not heard that question posed in relation to these changes.
Okay.
I don't actually recall doors being addressed in those prescriptive point system. So the prescriptive point system in the tiered code just gives you points for windows. I don't believe the doors were a factor. And so I think the glass patio door and the side hinge door, unless I'm mistaken, but I believe that they would both be in this, they would not be specifically targeted in the prescriptive point pathway. In the
So even a patio door would not be impacted by that? Is that what I'm?
That's my recollection from looking at that code change.
Okay. Well, maybe that would be interesting to dig deeper to that and just make sure.
I'm wondering if that isn't more of an issue maybe in the BC step code.
Okay.
When it comes to the performance path, then there's the HOT 2000 energy model for the whole house that is performed. And so, they look at the U values of the opaque doors and the glass doors, and basically whatever the builder decides to choose to put in gets modeled. And, if they choose one over another, it'll be on the basis of the U factor.
Okay. Patrick is asking, evaluation of what path will be easier / more feasible for the window manufacturers. Is it prescriptive or performance? What will contractors prefer?
Well, I think because the performance modeling with HOT 2000 is going to be new to much of Canada, and I think to introduce it coast to coast would be quite a challenge over a short time period. I suspect that's why they introduced the point-based prescriptive option, which doesn't require an energy advisor or a building energy model. So I think the prescriptive path will be the most widely used. And I think that's what the contractors will prefer. And I think that the value of higher performance windows that can reach Energy Star levels and beyond, that value is going to be, I think builders are going to appreciate that they can get a lot of bang for their buck with windows because of the high point scores that you can get in the colder climate zones for using a better than base code window.
Okay, and Patrick's commenting here saying it would have to be a pretty severe difference to actually drive anyone away from patio door if that's what they want. Going back to Cam's point.
I don't think that under the tiered prescriptive path there would be any penalty to a glass patio door over a hinge door.
Okay. Seems to be all the questions we had on this topic. So maybe we can move to the other one, and if we have questions along the way for this one, we can always go back.
Yeah. So that was interesting questions. Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll just give you a little bit of time to switch presentations here. I'll just use the occasion to thanks our sponsors again. So Veka for sure, and Everlast is a gold sponsor. So we're ready for the next topic.
Great. So this is the longer portion of our chat this morning. We're going to update you on the National Resources Canada Market Transformation Roadmap process that we've all heard a lot about over the last few years, except for the last year or so, it's been kind of quiet. So I'm going to look at it in two ways. One is an update on the process, where we're at. The second is I'm asking myself the question, where are we at today in terms of as an industry on the market transformation roadmap? And I've taken a deep dive into the Energy Star database, and I'll share with you what I found. And we can discuss that at the end of the presentation portion.
Good.
So here I'm going to present to you some slides captured from a presentation given by Jamie Houland, the director of the equipment division at NRCan, on June 10th this summer, where he basically, all stakeholders that would be part of the so-called expert teams were invited to kind of get us caught up to speed to where they're at and where they plan to go next. So they wanted to review how we got here. What were the drivers to develop this market transformation roadmap? How was it put together? And to look at where are we going? And they talk about the governance structure and the supporting implementation and the next steps. This effort was launched in early 2017 by the federal, provincial, and territorial governments under the Energy and Mines Ministers Conference group. It's the Energy and Mines Ministers Conference of 2017 that decided that they were going to participate in the, in the building sector on addressing Canada's Paris climate change commitments. And they went through a prioritization exercise to identify 3 equipment areas that they felt needed to be improved to help reach those goals. Residential windows account for up to 35% of home heat losses, and that's due primarily to the energy we use to heat homes. Space heating, the actual technologies that we use to heat homes, the largest source of energy consumption in the building sector, 50 to 60% of the energy used in homes and buildings. And the water heating sector, the second largest source of energy consumption, 8 to 19% of the energy use in homes and buildings. So these are the technologies that they're targeting in this program. They outlined aspirational goals over the short, medium, and long term for each of these equipment areas. And they identified a need for a market transformation roadmap to achieve them. And so looking at the summer of 2019, they got to work on trying to identify where are the gaps, that might be relevant to addressing to help the industry transition to more energy efficient products and technologies. Then they went through a prioritization exercise trying to find easy early wins as opposed to activities that require a longer time frame. They began to put together a work plan to take this process through the next 10 years or more. I mean, at this point, it was 2019. We're looking at 2030 as reaching the end of the roadmap. And then during the fall and winter of 2019, they were creating advisory committees and presenting plans on how they were going to approach this program, and trying to align it with funding resources at the federal level to implement these projects. And then the actual work was supposed to begin in this calendar year, 2020-21. Part of the process was to initiate what they call a lay of the land exercise to document existing and planned activities that would support the roadmap initiatives. And the goal was to identify initiatives that could be built upon and also to avoid duplication, determine where gaps exist, share what they've learned through doing this. And what they were basically doing is scanning existing public sources of projects and linking to roadmap initiatives. Initiatives from provinces, territories, academia throughout Canada, and also what were their objectives, timelines, and key outcomes. So they were going to survey the landscape of what are all the different programs that are around to stimulate progress in the area of greater energy efficiency in these 3 sectors. And the analysis is supposed to be provided to implementation teams to support the process. What they were calling implementation teams in the beginning, it seems to me, are now being called the experts teams that we're talking about today. So again, They had their plans for 2019 and spring, summer, fall, and by 2020, they were going to be rolling out new collaborative projects defined in work plans to make progress towards the goals. I'm assuming these things have happened. NRCan has been very quiet for the past year or more, and we haven't heard much about their activities here. And I was not directly involved in any of these initiatives from 2017 until just recently. So I'm not sure, how clear how this process actually played out and where they're at. But here's where we're at today. What we learned is that the fall 2019 election had put the process on hold, along with much government work. And that happened just before I came on board here in January. On February 20th, Steph arranged a meeting with NRCan in Ottawa. We met with Jamie Houlan and the team there for some high-level discussions. And Steph wanted to make sure that they were aware that Fenestration Canada is interested in participating in this, that we're engaged, and that we want to be involved in what they're doing, as I would say, as a goodwill partner, not as someone who's trying to block the process, but as someone who's trying to, be a responsible player in the process, do what we can, and be a part of it. And then in June, we had NRCan reaching out. They were willing to speak at our spring conference. We had Kimberly Curran talk about pros and cons of regulation. About the same time, Jamie Houlan was talking to the folks at FNBC during their conference. And so they've been, restarting engagement with us as an industry broadly. And then on August 11th, Jamie's webinar has confirmed that the market transformation work has restarted. And at this point, I was getting involved here on behalf of Fenestration Canada. So what have they done? Well, they now have a staff project coordinator, Ashley Mascarenas. He's basically in charge of communicating with all of the expert teams and the co-chairs, coordinating logistics and materials for meetings and so on. They've got a whole infrastructure set up with Microsoft Teams to facilitate communication. The space heating and hot water teams are more advanced in their activities than the fenestration team. And so they've got an infrastructure in place to facilitate meetings, coordination, information dissemination, and so on. They've announced their lay of the land database. At this point, it's presented to us in the form of a spreadsheet. And from what I've seen, it seems to be mainly a list of various utility and government incentive plans across the country. I know they want to enrich it with more detailed information that includes maybe research projects and other initiatives. But at this point, they're just getting it started, and I think it's possible, we'll be contributing in some ways with information related to that. So far, they've identified most of the work has been in identifying initiatives related to water heating and space heating technology. There were 75 so-called projects, but as I say, they look to me more like just lists of incentive programs rather than actual projects to get something done. Then they reviewed the typical roadmap pathway. When you want to transform a market from where the level of technology is today to a higher level of technology, there's often research and development required that leads to product development and testing, then demonstration projects that demonstrate industry and computer awareness, consumer awareness. As the information and awareness proceed, there's market education, labeling programs, training, incentives, and finally, once the technologies are out there and available with incentive programs, at some point then codes and standards are implemented to make sure that everybody is now moving up to this higher level of performance. So it starts out with research and development through to implementation, and incentives, and ends with regulation. They updated the space heating, they updated the water heating status areas. Here's all they had to say on the status of fenestration in this presentation. They mentioned that the new Energy Star specification took effect, version 5, on January 1st of the year. And it's at 1.22 metric U value. And that's a level that, if you're qualifying under U value path, you're looking at definitely at triple glazed windows, possibly still getting by with double glazed on the energy rating path. They also engaged with the several industry associations about market transformation. So they've held discussions with AVFQ, NBC, and Fenestration Canada. And they've outlined what their governance structure is. So basically at the highest level, we have the federal, provincial, and territorial steering committee. The co-chairs there are Jamie Houlan of Natural Resources Canada and Nat Gosman, who's in charge of Ministry of Energy and Mines here in British Columbia. Below that is a Roadmap Advisory Council, which consists again of Jamie Houlan and our CAN staff and a fellow from the heating sector. And then there are 3 experts teams below that. And that's the level at which we're involved. I have been appointed as the co-chair with Rob Singlehurst of the Windows expert team. Jeff was involved in that role when he was a consultant for Fenestration Canada, but since stepping back from that role, I've been appointed as the co-chair with Rob. And the purpose of the expert teams is to provide technical input and assessment of existing activities that support the roadmap. Secondly, provide a forum for sharing and identifying new activities related to research, development, and deployment. And thirdly, to address the main barriers that would be identified. So basically, they're looking for these window expert teams, for our team, to basically provide them with technical input. Where are we at as an industry? What are existing levels of technology that we are using? And also to have a forum to share and identify what's going on. They may have ideas about things, but they're largely looking to us to identify, we are sort of in transition right now through the Energy Star program to, there are increasingly more manufacturers offering higher performance projects. With the introduction of that January 2020 Energy Star spec, a huge number of products were dropped from the Energy Star program, which couldn't comply with that, with the performance levels of the new program. And so they're looking to know where things are at and what are the barriers for more adoption of the higher performance products that we have. And I'm sure most of you already have ideas about that. We can discuss that later. But basically, they are looking now to engage actively with industry representatives. So we're going to be working with the participation of Jeff Baker. He was involved in the process early on and is going to still be available to take part in the Windows expert group. So they have some proposals for next steps. One of them is they want to hold regional workshops that engage local experts and stakeholders to discuss the roadmap goals and activities through a regional lens. They're planning to conduct up to 6 of these across the country, locations to be determined. They will involve experts and representatives from government, industry, academia, and efficiency organizations. They say the workshops could inform the development of regional blueprints to outline policy and technical considerations, highlight best practices, local success stories and challenges, and highlight potential areas for future regional and national collaboration. So this is something they're working on that beyond this statement that this is going to happen, I can't comment any more about this. And they want to specifically get down to the regional lens to understand what's going on in terms of opportunities and challenges for the industry on a regional level. The other thing, and possibly a more important thing that they have to do, is they need to be reporting upstream to the levels of the provincial and territorial leaders with annual progress reports. And so these expert teams are also going to be providing information to update the higher ups in this process on where the industry is at. And they basically are going to be using this kind of scorecard that you have probably seen in some of the presentations at Windor in the last couple of years. So they're looking to the experts teams to start the conversation with industry participants this fall. With my co-chair, Rob Singlehurst, and also with Jeff's participation, we finalized the list of people that we felt would be good to participate in the Windows experts team. Basically started off with Jeff's list, and we added additional people that I thought would be useful, and had to drop a few people simply because we didn't want the group to be too large to be functional. The people dropped, though, were not direct participants from our industry. They were more people from outside associations, outside of Canada. So the invitations to the Windows experts team were sent out yesterday, actually, and I see in my inbox that people are already replying. And the goal here of these expert teams is to identify barriers and opportunities, report on progress to the Roadmap Advisory Council, and that's largely what we'll be doing. I guess I'm kind of repeating what we said before, but maybe it'll help you, Asfalte, remember. So the first Windows expert team, we're trying to set it up for the week of October 12th. And the next advisory council meeting will be October 21st. And they'll be looking for input from the expert teams. All of the expert teams will have had their first meeting before October 21st. So any questions on the process at this point from those on the line?
Well, for now, I just have Patrick Flannery asking, if his invite got caught in the spam filter for the expert team, but I guess, we'll see.
Could you repeat the question again?
No, it's just Pat saying that maybe his invite for the expert team got caught in his spam filter.
Oh,
so we'll say that's what happened. I think
it probably got into the spam filter, Pat.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Brad Feevold has a question, but I think he's typing it right now. So we'll, for now, we don't have any questions.
By the way, I will, as we move into the next session, I'm going to have lots of time to discuss the deep dive into the Energy Star database here.
Okay,
that's really what we're looking. Yeah, is there a question?
Yeah, I've heard this comment a few times. Just want to advise there are dual glazed casement product under 1.22 metric U values already. Is it possible? It is possible. Sorry, it's not a question. It's just a statement.
Yes. Okay, this is from Terry, right?
Yeah.
Yes. No, and that's true. When I say generally in triple glazed territory, I'm thinking broadly speaking. But yes, there are outlying products. There are products with really superior designs that can actually get to the Energy Star level with double glazing. So good point, Terry. I'm glad you brought that up. You probably are intimately familiar with a product like that. And definitely this gets to the whole question of smart thinking about designing window frames because it's possible to design superior performing frames at not necessarily much greater cost. It may be not even almost no incremental cost over existing frame designs, depending what material you're working in. So definitely good point. And then the other question is, I guess, for BC manufacturers focused on Part 9, will there be any impact to us from the national changes, or are we headed for full step code adoption with BC set targets already below national targets? will the step code, okay, will the national changes affect the step code future in BC? I would say no. The national code is playing catch up. BC has its own code. As you know, we have no obligation to slow down for the sake of the national code. So the BC process is independent and moving at its own speed. I do not think it will be slowing down just for the sake of the national code. If anyone knows better, certainly let me know, but I see no indication of that.
Okay, we have a question by Patrick. Any indication at this point what incentives might be contemplated?
I can't. I think in the lay of the land, they've identified various incentive programs that are underway coast to coast. I know that, for example, Manitoba, recently we've learned Manitoba is looking to introduce a new incentive program for upgrading windows. And we're looking for industry feedback on where they should set their targets maybe. So, definitely there is no national incentive program initiative at this time. They're basically provincial and local. That doesn't mean that it might not come in the future. It may.
Okay, so we have, Brad was able to put his question there. So this expert team that you talked about is different than the Fenestration Canada team that will be meeting to provide industry feedback from a FenCan perspective. Is that accurate? So maybe I can answer that a little bit
Sure.
with you. So yeah, so it's a different team, if you will. Still, like Al is there and will provide FenCan's perspective, our members' perspective. So that's why we had a couple meetings in the past few weeks to get this perspective. We'll keep having these meetings, and yeah, eventually a group might be formed. And Brad, you're in a good spot to know that, but probably from the Manufacturers Council to have like a task group there. So this is going to come up in our next few meetings with FenCan, but yeah, it's not the same team. It's more of a general, a more global team at the government level. But Al is co-chair for that team. Is that correct?
Yes, the experts team has people from different parts of Canada and different parts of the industry. Okay. So it's a different team than what we had the other week, a week or two ago. Is we had some we had some consultations just to get feedback from our members about, sort of blue sky thinking about the future, where we might want to go. These were just exploratory discussions that we were holding. There's no initiative arising out of that yet. But
it's the base.
So yes, this is a separate process.
Yeah. That's the base of the process, and then we take that, go to our different groups, including of course the board, and once we have kind of one clear message that can be like the FenCan message, then that's when we go to that expert team group and all that stuff.
And what I was wondering is did we as an industry want to consider making sort of proactive proposals for the future, as opposed to just waiting for them to come down with something. Yeah. And again, these were just exploratory early discussions with no immediate outcomes.
Okay, we have another question. We need to push for programs similar to the BC ICE fund to assist product development rather than sporadic window replacement programs. Energy Star-based rebates struggle as there are limited availability at those levels still. So that's more of a comment.
I totally agree with Terry. I think there's definitely a need to have a significant investment from both the provincial governments and the feds to help the industry in this transformation process. In fact, I was given a chance to review, a document with the guidelines for a BC Building Innovation Fund. So keep your eyes open and your ears perked. There is going to be a building innovation fund funding process. It will be announced to the industry that's going to provide significant funds for things that would be highly relevant to our industry, I think,
Okay.
and broadly to other industries. So I think
Okay.
it'll be interesting to discuss the potential of that when it's announced.
Okay, we have Patrick asking, would this ad hoc group be considered as a lobbying group? So I think it depends which group you're talking about. I think the expert team is a group put together by NRCan, so I would not think so, right?
No, the expert team is a NRCan invited group of stakeholders that they feel could be helpful in helping them understand where the industry's at, and that they can work with to help us achieve the roadmap goals with a minimum of pain and suffering, shall we say. Okay, they're looking for a kind of a collaborative way to get there. And they want to be advised. They don't understand the sector. They need to know what's going on, how it works, what can be done, what can't be done. So it's not a lobbying group.
Yeah, and
in
it's
terms
not.
of
Yeah, and there's no other side group, if you will, like the group within FenCan, because I see like I got more precision on the question. The group within FenCan is more of a making sure that we convey the reality of our membership, and it's not just like because Al has a position as a co-chair that he would push whatever personal agenda or just what he thinks is happening or what he sees. We just want to make sure we get the view of everyone, so we're basically there to make sure that we tell the reality of what it is, and also to make sure that we identify any type of roadblocks. And like we just spoke about, we might need some money, we might need some incentives, we might need some programs to actually get there. So all these roadblocks, that's what this team at NRCan is gonna most likely focus on. So no, I wouldn't think it's a lobby group, and especially not with what we do at FenCan. It's really making sure that Al has the full picture. I don't know, Al, if you have anything else to add to that.
I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay. Terry's mentioning show me the money, so there's that.
Well, I tried to address that in my last comment about the
Yeah.
BC Building Innovation Fund. So
yeah, I think his comment was related to that. So Brad's asking, will NRCan default to what the NBC 2020 is doing? This may be the best for our industry because it offers flexibility to builders, homeowners, manufacturers, etc. Can that be a consideration?
No, I think this process is separate from the code.
Okay.
The code is the tail end. This market transformation process is the tip of the arrow. It's trying to lead. The code is to clean up after, and yes, the code is there to start providing the demand for higher performing products, but it's kind of the regulation that comes at the code is not going to ask the industry anything it can't do. You have to build enough, you have to first build capacity industry to reach a higher performance level affordably before you can before the code can ask for it. And so this market transformation initiative is to try and build that capacity, trying to help the industry introduce the products at enough scale and at a price point that's going to make sense, so that when the code asks for it, the industry will be able to deliver. So the two very different roles of what the NRCan initiative is and what the code is doing. Okay. But all good questions, really. These are good questions. Yeah.
I think we can use the opportunity to say, like we went region by region to discuss those points. This call, like right now today, is also a moment, an opportunity for you guys, being most of you from the BC region to, like let us know what you think, or you can send emails to Al so he knows and we get a bigger picture. just to make sure that we represent well the industry as a whole, and the membership especially. So we reach out to you guys. We did a couple times. We had some participation, but we always feel comfortable. The more participation we get, the more comfortable we get. So don't hesitate. We're here to not only listen, but we want to convey the message too. So it has to go all the way up to the FENCAN board, who represents all the members, and we have to be able to find what is it we want to say, and what is it we need to be on the lookout for, and that's how we're going to do it. So, and Al is just happens to be in a really good position, and myself, I'm in this advocacy group too, so in this advisory council. So we have good positions to convey that message. We just want to make sure that the message we bring is real, is the reality. So that's why we're presenting all that stuff to you, week after week, anytime we have an opportunity, really. I think we have another question here. So we are seeing the step code pushing these lower targets much quicker than originally expected. Step 3 and 4 are showing up now and over the next year or two in many jurisdictions. Should BC push these achievable targets to adopt nationally? Is that realistic?
Well, that's really what the national code is trying to put in place, a structure that allows for steps to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, that doesn't exist in the code. And so that 2020 code is going to put in place the mechanism to allow for stepped initiatives, such as we're seeing in BC. And what we're seeing in BC, where jurisdictions are asking for step 3 or 4, is incremental building of capacity, so that if you ask the whole province to reach step 3 or 4, it would be a problem, because there'd be not enough product, not enough energy advisors, not enough builders knowing how to build to that level. But by doing it here, by doing it there, not across the whole province, but in a target, these sort of you might say random outbursts of step climbing.
Mm-hmm.
But what that is doing is kind of building local capacity in various markets, and providing signals to the marketplace that, hey, maybe it's time to develop a next generation product, because there's going to be a market for it. So, that's how the step code is supposed to work, is to, rather than overwhelm the industry with a radical change that they can't deal with, to put in place, essentially the code is becoming a market driver. The code, whenever a step higher is jumped up in a particular municipality, it is, yes, it's requiring the people in that municipality to build more energy efficiently, but it's being done at a scale that is more manageable than if you rolled it out to the whole province. And that's really what it's doing, is providing market signals for product development and creating larger market, for people who have those products. So, so really, that's how the step code is supposed to work, and it seems to be doing its job.
Okay.
Maybe not without pain, and I'm sure there's difficulty in some of these jurisdictions. People are finding it a challenge. It's a stretch. But what it means is that, if the local companies can't do it, another company who has the product can do it, maybe. And so it's just the way the market works. It's basically harnessing market forces to move ahead.
Okay, so we have a question here. Is it easier to get higher performance accepted in BC than elsewhere?
Accepted by who?
So Patrick's asking the question. I'll have to ask him to specify.
But Patrick, maybe we should have a separate call for your article to give you more input for your article, then, because we've got a half hour left to cover the material we have still to go. So.
Okay, well, we can keep going, and Terry kind of answered that BC is leading the way for sure. So yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, actually, Patrick, I think you should if you're writing an article, interview Terry, interview some of the folks on the BC Regional Committee, not just me, because in terms of boots on the ground as manufacturers, they have more local insight in that area than I do.
I would guess you're easier to reach than these guys these days. As busy as they are, that might be why.
Well, maybe
Okay,
that's why.
yeah, we can keep going.
Okay, so I'd like to take a look at, how do we get a handle on where the industry is today? And there's probably several different ways it could be done, but one data source that we have is the Energy Star database. And just for some context here, at Windor 2018, the window industry's progress towards the market transformation goals was presented with reference to the August 2018 Energy and Mines Ministers Conference report. And basically, in that report, they developed a scorecard for each of the 3 sectors that they want to move along this market transformation program. And so this is where they thought the industry was at in 2018. And I'm just going to show you the scorecard sort of layer by layer. When it comes to windows at a U factor of 1.6, all the dots are green. Does the technology exist? Yes. Does the market have access to it? Yes. Does the market know about the technology? Yes. Is it affordable? Yes. Acceptance. Is the form, fit, and function of the technology acceptable? Yes. Then they looked at the next level of U factors. This is the Energy Star level that we have today. But in 2018, again, the technology they felt exists. Does the market have access to it? Yes. Awareness. Does the market know about the technology? Well, they thought that was questionable. Is it affordable? Well, to some extent, maybe not totally affordable. Is the form, fit, and function of the technology acceptable? It says yes. And again, in my view, most products at this level are using triple glazing, although some of them may do it with double glazing for sure. Then when they look ahead, and by the way, the level at 1.2, this is the level that they wanted to be the typical window for sale in Canada in 2025 was going to be at this level, at what is today's Energy Star level. That was their aspirational goal. This would be the typical window in Canada. If we look at windows at U factor 0.8, which is the end of their market transformation goal, the question was, does the technology exist? And the answer was, to some extent. Does the market have access to the technology? To some extent. Does the market know about the technology? No. So it sounds like the technology is in an R&D lab or something. Is the technology affordable? No. Is the form, fit, and function acceptable? Well, to some extent. So this is what they thought about the status of the industry at that point. Is this true? Is this actually where we're at, or are we farther along this roadmap process? So I was curious about that. Where are we at on the roadmap today? Does this fairly represent the capabilities of our industry and our state of readiness to meet the 2030 goals? So to look at this, we analyzed the most recent version of the Energy Star database that I could get on August 27th, and it was the June 5th version of the data files. And we restricted the analysis to look at Energy Star most efficient products and better, simply because the Energy Star most efficient is the highest sort of level of Energy Star that we have today. So I thought that's a good point to look at. And we filtered and summarized the files to see what we could learn about the highest performing products in the database. So Energy Star has defined the most efficient U-value criteria as USI 1.5 or UIP 0.18. We analyzed the data to identify the number of unique product lines by operating type and frame material at the U-value categories shown at right. Basically looking at the steps in inch-pound units. I just looked at what's in the database. We had products at every one of these levels all the way down to 0.11. And so the 2030 aspirational goal was defined at 0.8. And so the closest inch-pound analog to that would be 0.14. And basically looked at the U value levels and just saw how many and what kind of products we had. So in the database, there was a total of 366,000 records. Of those, 143,000 or 39% were most efficient windows. And if we looked at most efficient by U value, we're looking at about 128,000 records, about 35% of them being the total. But I thought it was, okay, we'll just keep going. If we look at the actual total brands, which in this database represents manufacturers, there were 358 manufacturers in the total Energy Star program. And some people feel that the number of window manufacturers in Canada is somewhere in the neighborhood of 400. I don't know if that's the case. Some of you folks might have some insight into that. So, but of the 358 Energy Star manufacturers, 282 of them had products at the most efficient category. And if we look at products that qualify for most efficient by U value only, we had 270 manufacturers. And the reason I'm interested in the ones that qualify by U value only, that's what the building codes are going to be using in the future. They're not going to be, they're no longer recognizing an energy rating path in the tiered code, in the tiered national code. And certainly in the BC STEP code, the energy rating is not going to be a metric that is used in building codes going forward. So that's why I'm looking at products that only qualify on the basis of U value for this particular drill down into the records. And here's what I found. If we look at the most efficient gateway category at 1.05, there are a total of 730 individual product lines. There are thousands of product options, but I only looked at product lines, even though that product line might have anywhere from 5 to 30 or 100 different glass options. I've eliminated those options and just looked at individual product type, product model, and manufacturer, so that we're looking at product lines. And so we have 255 manufacturers offering a total of 730 product lines at this performance level. Interestingly, we have a really high proportion at a U factor of 0.99, 573 product lines, 216 manufacturers. If we go down to the next U value, 0.16, we still have 64% of the manufacturers have products available at this level. And if we look at the aspirational goal level, we have approximately half of the manufacturers with products available at this U factor level, 131 manufacturers and 201 product lines. So it's just really interesting to see that we already have significant participation at the most efficient level. If we do have 400 manufacturers in Canada, then certainly a little bit more than half of them have products at that level. Now, are they selling those every day? Is there a high demand for them? That's a whole different question. The point is they have the technology. And they've spent the money to qualify the products, test them, get their U values, get their NAPS testing done, have their air leakage numbers, and get them into the database. So it represents a significant effort on the part of the people in our industry to reach pretty high performance levels here.
So Al, let me ask you this. We have a question. And so out of all of these, like 127,000, do we know how many are fixed versus venting, how many are sliding doors, etc.? Like, do we have this detail?
Yes, okay. Yes, we do. So this is just the first look. Here's the breakdown by U value, by product type.
Okay, so that was your
Okay,
next slide.
and then the next slide is going to be by frame material. So we're looking at the data through three lenses, right? The first one was just distribution by U value. Now we're going to look at distribution by U value and product type, awning, casement, double casement, single, double hung, double slider, dual action, and so on. You can see that we have, clearly it's easier to reach this level with a fixed product, and no product line is complete without an operable product. So I think the more significant numbers are the casement and awning, double hung sliders. It's the operable products that are really showing us the number of complete product lines that would be available. But what is interesting is that we have every operator type available in the at the Energy Star most efficient level, which is USI 1.05, and quite a large proportion of them at U values down to 0.93, 0.88. And you know, 0.82. By the time we get to the Energy Star most efficient level, yeah, there's not a lot of products available at that level. But a little bit above that level, there's quite a lot of product. So again, this is telling us some things. It's telling us that we can get to the aspirational goal with today's glass and with today's operating types. It's just that it's harder in some operating types to get there, at least based on how many manufacturers have introduced products at that level. Arguably, though, there is very little demand for products at that level today. And so it's interesting to note, if we look at the bars, the colored bars at the top, you know, we see that we have almost as much product with the orange bars at 0.99 as we do at USI 1.05. And we have significant amount of product with the gray bars, you know, at the 0.93 level. So again, interesting, because in terms of, you know, where we're at, in terms of what we're capable of. If we go to the next slide, we see the breakdown of Energy Star most efficient products by frame material. So again, we have our styles here, the operating types on the left-hand column. We have the total number of brands or manufacturers offering these products. And on the right hand, we have the breakdown, the distribution by frame material. And we see that we have all the frame materials represented here to some extent in the various product lines. So, so I'm wondering what you guys think of this. You know, what do you think this information tells us about where our industry is at, and where we are with respect to those to the goals, where, you know, the thinking was that the aspirational U value goal was something that required technology we don't have, that it was unreachable. You know, it's when you look at the products that are getting down at the 0.8 level, they're not that different than the products that are at slightly higher U value levels. And essentially, it means they're using essentially the same kind of glass products. And it suggests that, you know, frame design is probably the characteristic that makes the difference between the lower and higher performing products primarily. And certainly with some materials, it's harder to get to a level as low as vinyl or fiberglass, but we have quite a lot of innovation in quite a lot of areas, which I think is quite interesting. So I'm wondering what you guys think about what this tells us where our industry is at. And feel free to offer your thoughts, ask your questions, and we can go back and forth between the slides as you wish.
Good. So we do have like something like 15 minutes left. We have Dave saying those statistics make it look like the system discriminates against slider. That's his take on it.
Yeah, I think that's a question Dave's brought up a number of times. You know, the sliding window in effect includes a mullion connection in it between the fixed and the slider, which
Mhm.
tends to make it harder to compete against, let's say, a casement window and a fixed window. You can mull the casement and the fixed together. The mullion is ignored, and it looks like a more energy efficient option than the sliding window. If those double frames were included, would that still be the case? You know, that's a legitimate concern. But it's interesting to me that there are sliders in this category.
Okay.
We've got, 41 single slider products, and we have a couple of, I think, double slider
Like
products.
double, 21 double. Yeah.
And we've got some double hungs and sliders, right? Yeah, double
Mhm.
sliders, vertical sliders. So, there aren't as many of them in the database. And if we go back and let's look at let's go back and look at sliders here. Single sliders, single hungs, double sliders. We have quite a lot in that 1.05 to 0.99 area.
Mhm.
So, what's interesting to me in looking at this data is that NRCan has given themselves until 2022 to decide what that ultimate aspirational goal will be. So they've announced it as 0.8, but it doesn't have to be 0.8, especially if 0.8 is not going to be economically or practically achievable across a variety of frame materials and operating types. So, I think there is potentially room for the industry to think about making recommendations at some point as to what that aspirational goal should be. Mm-hmm. And really what this tells me is that at this point today, that aspirational goal looks like it's pretty hard to reach. We don't have a lot of products at that category. However, when we look at some of the products that are at that level, if we know them well enough to know what they're designed like, what they look like, they don't look. Some of them don't look that much different from the windows that are at 1.05. And so I think there are strategies for designing window frames to maximize energy performance that don't necessarily require rocket science glass. Potentially that 0.8 or 0.9 level is potentially achievable with a triple glazed unit and only 2 low E coatings and a well-designed frame. In some product types, that might still not be enough to get you to that 0.8 or 0.9. But when you're looking at around 1.0, it looks like it's pretty doable. So I think it's just something to think about. That on the one hand, it may not be as hard to get to the aspirational goal as we think, provided there's going to be a market and a demand for those products. That goes without saying. Nobody's going to design and introduce products nobody's going to buy. So, but on the other hand, we may find that there are hard limits that are just going to be discriminatory to some product types that are very useful in the marketplace, such as sliding and vertical and horizontally sliding windows, which are so widely used in Canada, and there's many reasons why they're widely used. So there might be a good argument to propose at some point that the aspirational goal be revised upwards to something that is more achievable, so that all the products can comply with the same glass package.
Okay.
In my mind, the logical glass package will be a triple glazed unit with 2 coatings that will be the easiest kind of glass to get in Canada for a high performance window, and whatever level of performance that glass package can give you in good frame designs would be the logical place to set the U value goal.
Yeah.
So, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, we have two comments here. Terry's mentioning, he says, great point. If you're designing a 1.05, don't waste your time, as a 0.9 is not much different and not much significant added cost. And we have Brad saying cost will be a factor, as initially NRCan stated that they will target a cost to homeowner at less than $5 per square foot for the 0.8. Moving up to 1.0 may be a more better cost-effective approach.
So yeah, these are both good. These are both good comments. I think Terry's right. I think smart design can result in a product that performs significantly better than just by the design of the frame. A lot of these products here were not intentionally trying to be as most energy efficient as they could be. Some of them are just a product that was a triple glazed design with a cranked up glass package that's got 3 Lilly coatings in it, and it squeaks into the category, but it's not an optimal glass package for the homeowner. So some of these products are not optimal.
Okay.
But and the affordability question again is an interesting one, because what's affordable today and what's going to be affordable in 5 years or 10 years from now. When the step code in BC, for example, takes you to step 3, guess what? A triple glazed window becomes affordable because it's cheaper than all the other stuff you'd have to do to get step 3. And as you're trying to get to step 4, same thing. At that point, the affordability of a window equation changes, because it means you don't have to spend as much money on insulation, on heating and cooling technology. And at that point, the cost, the value proposition for windows changes. And what is unaffordable today all of a sudden becomes affordable. So I think these are, until we see these market dynamics playing out in a larger way in the marketplace, today it's hard to appreciate that a triple glazed window can be considered affordable. Mm-hmm. But the people running the StepWin program, when they do their analysis, the windows come out being the biggest bang for your buck. It's the place that seems to be often the most affordable thing you can do to help you get to a higher step building. And when the builder realizes that they save money in all these other areas with a better window, it just changes the way they think about it. And I think you can't see that in the rest of Canada yet, because they don't have a step code yet. They have mm-hmm. a building code that's double glazing will get you code compliant in every province across Canada. And so why would you want to buy a triple glazed window except for comfort? And so today it looks like very unaffordable, but 5 years from now, once there's a step code in place in the other provinces, we might be thinking differently about the cost of a triple glazed or higher performance window design.
Okay, we have another question here. Is the market transformation initiative taking into account embodied carbon, so related to energy carbon emitted in manufacturing as well as service life, as well as the typical operational carbon, so basically the annual energy used in building? So do they take all that into account?
So this is a really good and a very interesting question. I would say the answer is no. They are not taking carbon into account at this time. They are just dealing with energy performance as a kind of a proxy for carbon. But there are people who are actively thinking more and thinking clearly about, the reason we're dealing with energy is to deal with carbon in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And if you really want to deal with carbon, you need to look beyond just energy savings and think about embodied carbon in all the building materials we use. And so, for example, steel and concrete structures have huge embodied carbon in them. And if you can replace those with other materials, you can significantly reduce the carbon intensity of a building in terms of its materials. And sometimes the carbon embedded in the materials is so high that even with energy efficiency, the carbon footprint of that building is larger than it needs to be. if you started using less carbon intensive raw materials to make it. So I think the carbon discussion is becoming more serious, and I think it will start informing the discourse. I would guess maybe 5 years from now we'll be talking about carbon more than we are today.
Mhm.
But at this point, it's not on the metrics they're looking at.
Yeah, well, the same person's mentioning it says he says it raises interesting questions relating to window lifetime and U-factor. And
Definitely,
yeah,
definitely, yes.
and
Because
triple
when
pane.
you
No, go ahead.
go on, sorry.
Well, you just also mentioned and triple pane versus double pane. More versus less embodied carbon. Like what, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. A triple pane window will have more embodied carbon,
Yeah.
but then if you look at its performance over its life cycle, and
Mhm.
when life cycle analysis is done, they look at the energy savings, and the reduced carbon intensity of a higher performing product as part of the whole equation. So this life cycle analysis is kind of integral to carbon.
Yes.
And this is where having a durable, long lasting product, right? If you have a high performing window with a 15-year lifespan or one with a 40-year lifespan, the one with the longer lifespan will probably have a much better carbon footprint. But then again, a locally made frame and locally made glass might reduce the embodied carbon in a way that, let's say, a frame imported from Europe will have maybe more embodied carbon than the same type of frame made in Canada. So these are all kind of interesting questions that come up when you start thinking about carbon.
Yeah. Well, Terry's just mentioning marketing teams need to understand this relationship. You sell more expensive fenestration while saving the builder homeowner money. So
I think so too. And
yeah.
I would really encourage marketing people to follow the StepWin people. StepWin, they're working with several jurisdictions in BC. I think it was a government-funded initiative. They've developed a software package that can do the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of Hot 2000 runs, checking out all the possible options. And so if you're trying to design a step-free building, you put in your basic building parameters, and it will generate for you the most cost-effective option to look at for a building for the building, and windows show up as a very high value option. Okay. And I think in terms of marketing to builders in BC under the STEP code, I think the insights that you get from the StepWin people are I think should really inform your marketing efforts.
Okay. Thomas is asking, is there any movement to test window service life as we move to heavier triple glazed windows?
Well, what affects the service life of a window? Is it the weight? Or I guess it could be for some operating types. If you've got a casement window or an awning window, the amount of weight hanging off that sash, off the hinge mechanism, could be a durability issue that affects the service life of the product. I would say in something like a sliding window or a tilt and turn window, that's less to be likely the case because the sash is always gravity supported. I don't know of any formal way of addressing that at this time. So I would say the answer to the question is no.
Okay.
But the other thing that impacts service life is the insulating glass durability. That's a key thing. But we've been making triple glazed windows in some provinces like Manitoba, parts of Quebec for decades. And I don't know that the long-term durability is an issue, except in the case of things like hardware.
Yeah, he's mentioning something like potential higher leakage.
Leakage of what?
Would have to ask him. Maybe Thomas, if you want to precise your question.
I'm not sure what kind of leakage he would be thinking about.
Okay, so we'll just give him a couple of seconds. Overtime as extra weight on seals. Yeah.
Well, no. The short answer is no. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that's not a serious consideration.
Okay. You don't think it should be? You think it's...
Well, which seals are going to be affected? I mean, the glass is sitting on setting blocks. It's not going to affect the glazing seals between the glass and the frame.
Okay.
But then you're talking about the seal between the frame and the sash. That depends a lot on the hardware system, the operating mode of the window. It's just that we do have a track record of making triple glazed windows in Canada. And, I think, I don't know that we have a problem with those windows failing prematurely because of that. So,
okay, so right now there's nothing in that regards, and you don't see it happening too much.
he's saying in theory a triple is two duals as far as seals
No,
go.
so
You're talking about the seal.
No,
so he's talking about between
yeah.
the panes of glass in the insulating glass unit.
Yeah, so that's Terry specific, like kind of, I think,
Okay.
heading to that.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you're right, but that failure rate, 2% of 1/10, doubling 0.001% to 0.002 is not a huge risk. So what is that failure rate? We've got companies offering 20-year warranties on insulating glass units and longer. And a 20-year warranty is, probably means it's going to be lasting 30 years plus. So, if you are testing your insulating glass units as you should be under the code to the durability standards, ASTM 2190 or the CGSB 12.8, then your units should be lasting 20, 30 years and with a very low failure rate. So it's the quality of your manufacturing or the glass fabricator's manufacturing, but those units should have such a low failure rate that doubling it would be insignificant. So
Okay. Well, I think that's it. We're right at the end of this session. I don't see any more questions. So I'll just invite everyone to attend our next session in 30 minutes. This one will be talking about, Al, if I'm not mistaken, window testing and labeling in Canada, right?
Yes. And I'll tell you why we created that presentation, what it's intended to do, and ask for your feedback on whether it's going to do the trick or whether it needs some improvement.
Perfect. So we hope to see you there in 30 minutes. We'll give you a little break here. Thanks a lot for attending. Thanks a lot to our sponsors, Veka and Everlast. So see you again in 30 minutes.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.